Welcome to Story Time. I am Reading Buddy. We bring you a story every week. You probably have heard that lying is not good. In today's story, 7 boys lie to their parents. Their father decides to give them a very special lesson. What will he do? Let a Reading Buddy read you this story called The Cave of the Beasts. Oh, don't forget to stay until the very end and learn a Chinese phrase with Reading Buddy. Ready? Let's get started. Once upon a time, there was a family in which there were 7 brothers. One day, when the father went out to gather the wood, he found 7 beautiful and huge wild duck eggs. He brought them home, intending to serve them at his father's birthday party next week. He called all his 7 sons and said,
"We are going to save these eggs for Grandpa's birthday. Do not eat any of them before that day, okay?"
"Yes, Daddy,"
said the boys. The next morning, the mother woke up early to cook the wild duck eggs. While the eggs were cooling down, the 7 boys woke up and followed the delicious smell to the kitchen.
"They look so appetizing,"
said the first son.
"But we promised Dad and Mom we will not eat any of them until Grandpa's birthday,"
said the second son.
"I don't think Dad and Mom will find out if we just try a tiny bite,"
said the third son. So each of the 7 boys picked up an egg and took a tiny bite.
Yum, yum.
However, the eggs were so flavorful that the boys had finished the eggs before they even realized it.
"Oh, we're in trouble,"
said the second son. The third son thought and thought, and he said,
"Aha, I have an idea."
When the father came into the kitchen, the eggs were nowhere to be seen. He called all the 7 boys and asked,
"Did you guys eat the eggs?"
"I don't think so,"
replied the third son.
"Then who ate the eggs?"
asked the father.
I don't know. Maybe a squirrel came into our house and ate them?"
replied the third son. However, later that morning, when the father and the mother were brushing the boys' teeth, they found yolk particles all over their mouths. The father was very angry with the children and said,
"Who wants to go along to Grandma's house?"
But he intended to lead the children into the mountains to time out for a week. The older sons suspected this and said,
"We're not going alone."
But the 2 younger ones said,
"We will go with you."
And so the third and the fourth sons drove off with their father. After they had driven for a long time, they asked,
"Are we there yet?"
"Almost,"
said the father. And when they had reached the mountains, he told them,
"Wait here. I will drive into the village ahead of you and tell Grandma that you are coming."
And then he drove off with the car. The third and the fourth sons waited and waited, but their father did not come. At last, they decided that their father would not come back to pick them up, and that he had left them alone in the mountains. So they went further and further into the hills, seeking a shelter for the night. Then they spied a great stone. They thought this stone would make a pillow and rolled it over to the place where they were going to lie down to sleep. And then they saw that the stone was the door to a cave. There was a light in the cave, and they went inside. The light they had seen came from the many precious stones and the jewels of every sort in the cave, which belonged to a wolf and a fox. They had a number of jars of precious stones and pearls that shone by night. The boys said,
"What a lovely cave this is. We will lie right down and go to bed."
For there stood 2 golden beds with gold embroidered covers. So they lay down and fell asleep. During the night, the wolf and the fox came home, and the wolf said,
"I smell human flesh."
But the fox replied,
"Oh, nonsense! There are no human beings who can enter our cave. We lock it up too well for that."
The wolf said,
"Very well. Then let us lie down in our beds and sleep."
But the fox answered,
"Let us curl up in the kettles on the hearth. They still hold a little warmth from the fire."
The one kettle was of gold and the other of silver, and they curled up in them. When the boys rose early in the morning, they saw the wolf and the fox lying there, and were much frightened. And they put the covers on the kettles and piled up a number of big stones on them, so that the wolf and the fox could not get out again. Then they made a fire. The wolf and the fox said,
"Oh, how nice and warm it is this morning. How did that happen?"
But at length it grew too hot for them. Then they noticed that the 2 boys had kindled a fire, and they cried,
"Let us help. We will give you lots of precious stones and lots of gold. It will do you no harm."
But the boys would not listen to them, and kept on making a bigger fire. So that was the end of the wolf and the fox in the kettles. Then the boys lived happily for a number of days in the cave. But the father started to miss his sons, and he went to the mountains to look for them. He sat right down on the stone in front of the cave to rest, and tapped his hiking pole against it to get rid of the dirt. Then the boys inside the cave called out,
"Who's knocking at our door?"
And the father said,
Are those not my sons' voices?
The boys replied.
"Is that not our father's voice?"
Then they pushed aside the stone and saw it was their father. And their father was so glad to see them once more.
"Oh, Daddy, we're very sorry for lying to you and Mom."
Oh, my sons, I'm glad you learned a lesson.
He was much surprised to think that they had discovered this cave full of precious stones, and they told him the whole story. The father found some people to help him carry home the jewels. When they got home, the boys told the mother and their brothers everything.
Once upon a time, there were 2 boys. They went inside a cave.
The 7 boys felt very sorry for what they had done.
Sorry, Dad. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Daddy. Sorry, Mommy.
The father said,
Well, let's turn this into a valuable life lesson. How are you going to make up your mistake?
The boys discussed with each other for a while and came back to their parents.
We will use our allowance to buy eggs for Grandpa's birthday,
said the 3rd son.
And we can sell those jewels and use the money to share our lessons with other children so they will not make the same mistake,
said the 2nd son. With the parents' help, the boys set up a non-profit organization called the Good Behavior Foundation, which published a series of books on many important values such as honesty and integrity, sharing and taking turns, respect, kindness, and many more. Can you think of another important value in addition to what those boys came up with through their The Good Behavior Foundation? In today's Chinese time, Reading Buddy is going to teach you how to say I'm sorry in Chinese. 对不起,对不起. Reading Buddy knows how scary it can be when making a mistake. But I also know that your parents will be willing to forgive you if you tell the truth. Say 对不起, I'm sorry, and learn from the mistake. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time.